The first thing I heard after opening my eyes was the steady beep of a heart monitor. For a few seconds, I couldn't remember where I was. Then the pain hit. A deep ache spread across my stomach, making every breath feel heavy. A nurse noticed I was awake. She smiled gently. "Welcome back. The surgery is over." I swallowed. "My son. He's safe. Your friend Karen picked him up from school." Relief washed over me. "My name is Claire Dawson. I was 35 years old. A widow. The mother of an incredible 10-year-old boy named Ethan. For years earlier, my husband, Daniel, had died in a construction accident. One ordinary morning, he kissed us goodbye. That evening, 2 police officers knocked on our front door. Life never looked the same again. Since then, Ethan had become my reason for getting up every morning. No matter how difficult life became, I kept moving because he still needed his mom. That was why lying in a hospital bed terrified me. Not because I was afraid of dying, because I was afraid of leaving him alone. The nurse adjusted my blanket. "The doctor will be here soon." I nodded. "Could I use my phone first?" "Of course." She placed it carefully in my hand. I immediately called my mother. She answered after several rings. "Claire." Her voice sounded rushed. "Mom, they rushed me into emergency surgery. The doctors think my appendix ruptured." Silence. Then I heard laughter in the background. My younger sister, Melissa. Mom covered the phone for a moment before speaking again. "I'm at Melissa's house." I frowned. "What happened?" "She and Brandon had another fight." I closed my eyes. Another fight. Melissa and Brandon argued almost every month. Every argument became a family emergency. Mom continued. "She's completely heartbroken." I whispered. "I'm in intensive care." "I know. I'll come tomorrow." My voice trembled. "The surgeon said the next 24 hours are critical." Another pause. Then the sentence I had heard in different forms my entire life. "Your sister needs us more right now." I stared at the ceiling. "Mom, I need you." "I'm sorry. I really am." But Melissa's falling apart. The call ended. Not because we finished talking. Because she hung up. The nurse quietly watched me lower the phone. "I'm sorry." I smiled weakly. "You don't have to apologize." She gently squeezed my shoulder before leaving me alone. The silence gave my memories room to return. When we were children, Melissa always came first. If she forgot homework, Mom drove back to school. If I forgot mine, "It'll teach you responsibility." When Melissa earned a B, Dad hired a tutor. When I earned straight A's, they said, "That's what we expect from you." I became the dependable daughter, the easy child, the one who supposedly didn't need much attention. Even after adulthood, nothing changed. When Daniel proposed to me, my parents skipped our engagement dinner because Melissa's dog had surgery. When Ethan was born, Mom visited for 30 minutes. Melissa had wanted help decorating her apartment. When Daniel died, I remember standing beside his grave holding Ethan's tiny hand. I kept looking toward the cemetery entrance, certain my parents would arrive. They never did. Later that evening, Mom called. "I'm so sorry. Melissa has the flu." I couldn't leave her alone. That sentence haunted me for years. Now I was hearing it again. Different words. Same meaning. Someone else mattered more. Late that afternoon, my surgeon entered my room. His expression was serious. The infection spread further than we hoped. My heart raced. Am I going to be okay? We're optimistic. But complications remain possible. He pulled up a chair. "If anything unexpected happens, is there someone we should contact immediately?" I thought about Ethan. Then about Karen, my best friend since college. She had already picked him up from school. She'd probably made him dinner, helped him with homework. She'd been more present in 4 hours than my own parents had been all day. "Call Karen." The doctor nodded. "And your parents?" "They know." He understood without asking another question. After he left, I opened the bedside drawer. Inside rested a plain white envelope. Months earlier, while updating my will after a routine health scare, my attorney had suggested writing personal letters. One for Ethan, one for Karen, and one I never imagined would actually matter. Across the front of the third envelope, I had written 4 simple words in black ink. "If Mom doesn't come." I had almost thrown it away several times. It felt dramatic, unnecessary. Surely my mother would come if my life truly depended on it. Now the unopened envelope sat quietly beside me, waiting. I picked it up and traced the words with my fingers. Just then, the nurse returned. She noticed the envelope. "Is there someone you'd like me to give that to?" I looked toward the hospital door, still hoping, still believing, still waiting for the sound of familiar footsteps racing down the hallway. I slowly placed the envelope back inside the drawer. Not yet. Maybe. She'll still come. Outside my room, visiting hours were beginning. Families hurried through the corridors carrying flowers, balloons, and warm meals. Each time footsteps approached my door, my heart lifted for a moment, then fell again as strangers walked past. By sunset, one chair beside my hospital bed remained completely empty. And for the first time in my life, I began wondering whether the hardest part of surviving wasn't the illness itself, but finally accepting that the people you keep waiting for may never choose you at all. Morning sunlight filtered through the hospital window. I had survived the night. The infection was beginning to respond to the medication, but I was still weak. The chair beside my bed remained empty. No flowers. No overnight bag. No sign that my parents had come. Instead, Karen walked in carrying a small backpack. "Ethan made you a card." I smiled as she handed it to me. On the front, written in uneven blue letters, were the words, "My mom is the strongest person I know." Inside, Ethan had drawn the two of us holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. At the bottom he had written, "Please come home soon. I still need you." I cried harder than I had since the surgery. Karen hugged me gently. "He misses you." "I miss him too." The doctor entered a few minutes later. He smiled for the first time. "Your condition is improving." We're cautiously optimistic. Relief washed over me. Not because the danger was completely gone, but because I might get to keep the promise I had made to my son, that I would always do everything I could to come home. 3 days later, I was discharged. Karen drove me home. Ethan ran across the front yard and wrapped his arms around me so tightly that my stitches hurt. I didn't care. Nothing had ever felt better. A week later, my mother finally called. "Claire, I've been so busy. I've been meaning to visit." I answered calmly. "I don't need a visit anymore." She sounded confused. "What does that mean?" "It means I already know where I stand." She became defensive. Melissa was having a terrible time. I closed my eyes. "Mom, my surgeon wasn't sure I'd survive the first 24 hours. Silence. She had no answer. Instead, she quietly asked, "Can we meet?" I agreed. Not because I expected an apology, because I wanted to say something I had spent years keeping inside. We met at a quiet cafe. Mom looked tired. She reached for my hand. I gently pulled it back. "I need you to listen." She nodded. I placed a white envelope on the table. Across the front were the words, "If Mom doesn't come." Her hands began to shake. "You wrote this." "I wrote it months ago. I hoped I'd never need it." She slowly opened it. Inside was only one handwritten page. It read, "Mom, if you're reading this, it means I needed you one last time, and once again, someone else came first. I don't blame Melissa. She didn't make these choices. You did. When Daniel died, I waited for you. When Ethan was born, I hoped you'd stay. When I lay in a hospital wondering whether my son might lose his only remaining parent, I still believed you'd choose me. You didn't. Please don't tell Ethan that you loved me. Show the people who are still here before it's too late." By the time she reached the end of the letter, tears covered the page. I never realized. I spoke quietly. "That's the problem. You never realized because you never stopped to look." She whispered, "I thought you were stronger." "I am. But strong people still need their mothers." For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she asked the question I never expected. "Is there any way to fix this?" I answered honestly. "I don't know. But I know pretending nothing happened won't." Healing came slowly. Not through promises. Through actions. My mother began calling every week, not to talk about Melissa, but to ask about Ethan. She attended his soccer games. She remembered his birthday without being reminded. For the first time in years, she listened more than she spoke. She also apologized to Karen. "If you hadn't been there for Claire." Karen smiled gently. She didn't need perfection. She just needed someone to show up. Those words stayed with my mother. Months later, Melissa visited me alone. "I didn't know Mom wasn't with you." I looked surprised. "She told you she was at the hospital." Melissa stared at me. "No. She told me she was checking on you after spending the day with me." For the first time, we both realized the truth. Years of excuses had hidden behind misunderstandings. Melissa hadn't asked to be chosen. Mom had simply kept choosing. That conversation changed our relationship. Instead of competing for our mother's attention, we became sisters again. 1 year later, our family gathered for Ethan's birthday. As everyone laughed in the backyard, Mom quietly walked over to me. "Thank you." "For what?" for giving me the chance to become a better grandmother. I smiled. Just keep showing up. She nodded. I will. Watching Ethan play with his cousins, I realized something important. People often believe love is measured by words. It isn't. Love is measured by presence. By who sits beside your hospital bed. Who answers the phone at midnight. Who cancels their plans because you matter. The note I wrote was never meant to punish my mother. It was meant to tell the truth I had been too afraid to say aloud. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't protecting someone's feelings. It's finally letting them see the pain they've caused. Because only the truth gives people the chance to change. And while my mother could never give me back the moments I spent waiting alone in that hospital room, she chose to spend the rest of her life making sure neither I nor my son ever had to wonder again whether we came second. In the end, that choice didn't erase the past, but it helped us build a future where showing up mattered more than saying, "I'm sorry." And that became the lesson our whole family carried forward.